A couple years ago, I made a video with a pretty accurate claim, I think, that in the very near future, we'd see a wave of games inspired by Paper Mario and Mario and Luigi. Whether this would be because the people who played these titles as kids are now old enough to develop their own games, or the fact that both series are effectively dead, with few alternatives. But one thing I never would have predicted is that in less than 2 years, we'd get a spiritual successor that's so good that not only is it on the same level as the originals, but it might actually legitimately be better. Hey everybody, welcome to the Hidden Chest, a spoiler-free showcase of overlooked and/or underrated games. And today, we've got a bit of a doozy. Bug Fables, the Everlasting Sapling, is a kind of game that doesn't come around very often. It's an apprentice that surpasses its master. An indie game with so much depth, content, and polish that it blows many AAA games with hundreds of times its budget completely out of the water. This is one for the history books, and considering how much I respect it, I'm gonna do my best balancing act to convey just how special this game is while spoiling as few surprises as I can get away with. Given that I just said that this is better than two of the most beloved Nintendo games ever made, I'll have my work cut out for me. So, right off the bat, when you see this art style combined with that gameplay, chances are you know exactly where this is going and how it generally works. The game isn't exactly secretive about its inspiration, that much is obvious. But for those of you out there who aren't quite as familiar with Paper Mario and its trappings, I'll go ahead and give you a very quick rundown of the basics. This type of game is a Mario RPG-like, or as I like to call it, a MARPG. In essence, it means that it's a turn-based RPG where every attack you perform contains its own little minigame. Clicking the right buttons at the right time in the right way is how you guarantee good damage. These mechanics even apply to defensive play, with dodging, or in Bug Fables' case, blocking. You platform around an expansive overworld, there are no random encounters, and you also have limited special points, which you can use to pull off more powerful attacks. It's all extremely fun and intuitive, you get the idea. And the familiarity doesn't end there. Pivoting back to fans of Paper Mario in particular, if there's a feature you loved in those games, there's like a 90% chance Bug Fables has it. And often, it's even better than it's ever been. You've got tattling and all the expansive dialogue that comes with that. Cooking is here and better than ever, cutting down on wait time while adding 70 recipes to craft and discover. You've got charms that randomly buff you during battle. You got star piece analogs. There's a much less tedious and annoying Pit of 100 Trials type gauntlet. And of course, badges. God, I missed badges. There's a comforting amount of familiarity here, that's for sure. While playing this game, I felt, how do I describe it? Remember that one scene at the end of Ratatouille? There's something beautiful in pulling off a spiritual successor well, and this game does it near flawlessly, while having a very distinct identity of its own. Yeah, just because some nostalgic elements are present doesn't mean you can rest on your laurels. It's funny because laurels are a type of leaf and that's somewhat tangentially relevant. So yeah, I'm just gonna rip off a huge band-aid real quick. This game doesn't have partners. Well, it has something kinda similar later on, but that's a spoiler, so In Bug Fables, you instead have a tightly knit squad of 3 main characters. There's Leaf, the magical moth with a mysterious past, Kabu, the wholesome beetle with a warrior spirit and a heart of gold, and V, the spunky bee with a passion for exploration and a hatred of being tactful about anything ever. Basically, the entire game is based around the teamwork and camaraderie between these 3 arthropod explorers. Each one has a niche and a ton of special moves. Kabbu can flip enemies and pierce defenses. Leaf can freeze enemies with ice magic and attack buried foes. And V can knock down flying enemies with her trusty bee-meringue. Yes, that is its canon name.
Talking bees, no yogurt night. My nerves are fried from riding on this emotional roller coaster!
This utility even applies to the overworld, where you can swap characters at will and use their various skills to solve puzzles. And this immaculately designed chemistry isn't just limited to the mechanics. The way this team grows and comes closer together over the course of the game is simply delightful, and each individual member gets an extensive amount of development. Plus, you still have tattling. Each character has their own quips for every enemy, and their group huddles about literally every location and NPC in the game. There is seriously an immense amount of flavor text here that really brings these characters and their friendship to life. If you get out of this game not loving all three of these bugs, congratulations, you have no soul. I can't go into more detail than that, but I honestly think that the amount of polish and development that went into the team and its dynamic really makes up for the lack of partners overall. This talk of teamwork inevitably brings me to this game's battle system. And like I mentioned before, things are pretty self-explanatory on a base level. But mechanically, I think this game shockingly has more depth than its papery predecessors. While you still need to keep track of each character's unique skill set, of course, positioning is just as important. For example, the character at the front of the party gains an attack boost at the expense of being targeted by enemies more often, while the character in the back of the party is unlikely to be targeted at all. You can swap positions at the beginning of any turn, and importantly, you can still attack in any order no matter what that positioning is. And even better, you can gift any character another character's turn. Doing this lowers the power of the receiving bug during that extra turn, but it's a great tactical move that I use often. And then there's the special moves. Ooh boy. There are more of them than ever, and most of them aren't attached to badges anymore, which not only lets you access them all at all times, but it also opens up badges, which are called medals here, to be crazier and more versatile than they've ever been. One of my earlier strategies was to put Kabbu in the front of the party with his super block medal.
Normally, when you block with perfect timing, you take 1 point less damage. This badge gives you even further defense when you pull that off. Then I gave V the power exchange medal so that her damage would raise by 1 at the expense of her defense.
So to compensate that, I added a back support medal so that as long as she was in the back of the party, the defense penalty would be annulled. Then to complement that, I added the ADBP enhancer and the spiky bod medal so that—
Okay, you get the point. There's so much you can pull off here, from abusing status afflictions on yourself, inflicting crazy debuffs, or pulling a Luigi and beating enemies by just standing there. There's a surprising amount of strategy involved, and considering the way I play, it's kinda necessary. Normally, Bug Fables has a typical Paper Mario level of difficulty, maybe harder honestly, depending on your skill level I guess. With turn-based RPGs, it's really hard to tell, but if you're a pro gamer like me, you'll want to use the hard medal. It's literally the first item you get, and unlike its Paper Mario equivalent, Double Pain I think it was called, this right here is a full-blown new difficulty setting. Enemies have more health, more damage, and often more defense, and in exchange you get more EXP and items when enemies are defeated. You even get rewarded with super rare medals by beating bosses in this mode. It can be pretty brutal at the beginning. Some might even say it's too brutal during Chapter 2 and 3 especially, but you can take it off whenever, so it wouldn't hurt to try it out.
Tactical nuke incoming!
You know, one thing I didn't expect out of Bug Fables was to be so enamored with the story and the world. Something about it being in a fantasy bug kingdom and being based on games that had mostly pretty simple overarching plots made me kinda doubt whether this game would be very story heavy. But I was dead wrong. I honestly thought that Bug Area would be some non-sequitur fantasy land where everyone just happened to look exactly like bugs because magic or something. But no. Everything is the way it is for a very distinct reason that is actually explained if you look for it. I mean, there are like 25 different lore books you can find. Sure, each one is just a paragraph or so long, but they're really cool. And asides, there are so many great and memorable characters. Each locale has its own distinct culture, every kingdom has its own politics, and the main exploration team unit is just phenomenal. The story is still PG, of course, but it's like Super Paper Mario or Avatar PG. It can get really dang dark. They just never say the word, you know how it is. The only thing that really bugs me about the narrative is certain characters probably should have gotten more screen time. Other than that, though, this world is so engaging. You hear of so many interesting fantasy concepts, far-off exotic locales, and ominous unsolved mysteries that I could honestly see like multiple sequels and spin-offs going in depth over them. This game, on my word, gets your imagination running wild. And this is especially amplified by the beautiful visuals. On a purely technical level, I think it's somewhere between Paper Mario 1 and 2, but on an aesthetic level, it keeps up with the best of them. There's a ton of detail here. Every area is incredibly distinct, and assets seldom repeat themselves. I mean, there are so many different fighting backgrounds for battles, and there are like hundreds of unique NPCs, with none of them being visibly repeated, except for workers and guards. But that's just an insect thing, you know how that is, right? And of course, the music. It's extremely catchy and fits just about every scenario. And there's just so much of it. I catch myself humming tunes from this game long after I finished beating it, so that's gotta count for something, right? Plus, every story boss gets its own unique theme, and I love it when games do that. But even with all of that considered, what especially blows my mind about this game is just how absolutely packed it is. This isn't just some medium-sized romp. Despite the whole paper theme, they didn't cut a single corner. Bug Fables is just as long as the games it's based on. Probably even longer. And unlike the 1,000-Year Door, it doesn't rely on an obnoxious level of padding to do it. Oh! Seriously though, the normal campaign on its own is 7 chapters long, but there's just so much in here even beyond that. There are multiple optional areas and dungeons, 30 side quests, some of which are really meaty. There are 15 optional bosses, yes, 15 completely original optional bosses, and crazily enough, what practically amounts to 2 completely optional chapters. Yes, chapters. This entire game basically reeks of excessive, well, everything. They went above and beyond in nearly every conceivable way. Around every corner, there's some new thing. A new shop, a unique NPC, a new mechanic, a new minigame, a new hidden area, a hidden gag or secret detail, a new line of dialogue for a very specific context. One of the 50 discoveries that give you even more lore. Even in the main campaign, you'll come across so many elaborate one-and-done mini-bosses where you think, they didn't need to make these super fun-to-fight enemies outside of the chapter's obligatory boss, but they just do it anyways. For crying out loud, they made an optional card game within the game where you use your tattle data to fight people, and it's legitimately super fun and spins off into this entire subplot where you... Even to the tiniest little things, like how every area has its own unique battle transition. Literally no stone is unturned. It's so consistent in its consistency. Every time I ran into something like this, it just made me further realize I'm playing one of those games. The type that'll be considered an all-time classic for years to come. Or at least it should be. Jury's still out on if people would be made aware of its existence or not. Like seriously, this game is just one big YouTuber endorsement away from being a mega success, so like get on that. Near every complaint I have about this game is so minor that it might as well not even matter. And here's where I'd list some of them to comedically show you how small they are, but while making this video, I'm sad to say, pretty much all of these minor gripes I had were fixed in patches. Like geez, thanks Moonsprout Games, I just wanted to complain about how loud water geysers are. But you couldn't leave well enough alone, could you? Seriously though, this is one of the best indie games I've ever played, and my personal game of the year. When I became a backer on Indiegogo 2 years ago, I had no idea the beast I was awakening, like Jesus Christ. Whether you're familiar with Paper Mario or not, this is a must-play, no questions asked. And it's coming to Switch and PS4 sometime this year, so hopefully those ports are good. If Bug Fables isn't as popular as other indie classics like Celeste and Hollow Knight by the end of the year, we riot.